Hey Lexi, can you believe we've been doing this podcast for 10 years now?
Wow.
Want to share some of our favorite memories, episodes, etc. at all?
Yeah.
Then let's get the conversation started. Hello and welcome to LexiCon. It is Maddie.
Lexi.
And Dylan.
And that's right, today is a very special day. Father's Day.
Yeah!
So, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
Happy Father's Day to Pedro Pascal.
Wouldn't that be more like Happy Daddy's Day?
Maybe.
Hey, Daddy.
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, but we've got our own thing to celebrate. That's right, this is our 10th anniversary. The first episode of LexiCon podcast went up on June 18th, 2013.
That was a long time ago.
And now episode 356 is going up June 18th, 2023.
Yup.
So, what do you guys want to talk about?
I'm currently processing the fact that it's been 10 years. I was 12.
Were you?
Yeah.
I was less
I
than
thought you were
12.
13. You weren't even a regular
No,
on the
'cause it was
podcast when we
2013.
started. You do appear on that first episode. You did bounce into our, we recorded on our back porch, our closed-in porch. Back then, you did pop in to make a cameo.
Nice.
But
What'd I say?
I don't know. We'd have to go back and listen to it. And considering how poor the audio quality is, I'm not sure I really want to do that.
If y'all are curious, it's on the internet somewhere.
It is both on our YouTube channel at LexiCon Podcast, and it's up on the podcast archive at lexiconpodcast.wordpress.com.
Nice.
Yeah, she can see the screen in front of her, but the people listening can't.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that's
God,
just
come
sad.
Look, I'm sorry. I can also
It's
only half
right
read the
there.
words on the screen.
I got into podcasts in the late 2000s.
Late 2000s?
Well, the decade 2000s, like 2000
Well,
to
yeah, I
2009.
figured.
Yeah,
Decade.
I had heard of podcasts from, I want to say that one of the wrestling newsletters I was a fan of, PW Torch, they did some podcasts. And I know guys like Ricky Gervais and Adam Carolla were doing podcasts back then. But I really got into podcasts when Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier launched their podcast, Smodcast.
How old are podcasts?
I think they only go back to the 2000s. Around this time is when they were originated. I mean, you'd have to define podcast. If any sort of audio show on the internet, does that qualify?
Probably.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure from whence the term comes, but like I said, I really got into him with Smodcast. That was my jam. And Kevin Smith does a lot of podcasts now, but back then that was the sole podcast he did. And somewhere around 2013, he had said on one of his podcasts, you know, hey, this is sort of not the Wild West exactly, but it's open. Anybody can do a podcast, you know. It's free to do, and there are plenty of ways to get it out there to people. And even if nobody ever hears it, you'll have a record of yourself talking with your friends or your family or whomever. So he just was encouraging people to do it, and I took that to heart. And I said, well, I know my wife's not really going to want to sit down and have these kind of not that she doesn't like talking to me,
Yeah.
but she's not really the sort of performer that we are. So I knew she probably wasn't going to want to do it. And Dylan was really young at the time, so he didn't seem like an option. I could have sat down and just talked with myself and just monologued, which sometimes I feel like I'm doing on this show. You were hitting that age where you were really starting to come into your own. Like you said,
Yes.
you were just about to become a teenager, and I thought, you know what, let's see if Alex wants to do it. And then, if nothing else, we'll have a record of a father and daughter having conversations. That's sort of what the podcast is built around. And in fact, that's where the name comes from, because of course, a lexicon is like a personal dictionary.
Yes.
It's your personal store of
Vocabulary.
words. But we adapted your name, which your name is Alexis.
Yes.
But you went by Lexi. Now you go by Alex, even though on the podcast we always call you Lexi to keep consistent with the title.
Same thing family always calls me.
But we combined your name Lexi with the word conversations to create the portmanteau of LexiCon.
Yes.
Now, fun fact, I had actually used that word before in my fantasy football league
Really?
when I had to name a conference, which
Yeah.
if you don't understand, a conference, like in football terms, is just a grouping of teams. Like in the NFL, you have the American Football Conference and the National Football Conference. It's just a way of organizing the teams.
Interesting.
And the one that I was going to name, you were not a newborn necessarily, but you were young
Baby.
at the time.
I had no idea what
You
was
weren't
happening.
playing fantasy football or anything, but I wanted to honor you with team names, etc. So I named my conference the LexiCon, the Lexi Conference.
Had a whole conference named
Again,
after
playing
me.
off the word lexicon.
Yes.
So that's actually the origin of us using the term, and it just seemed to fit for the podcast. And like I said, we've always built it around conversations between a father and daughter, and eventually conversations between a father, daughter, and son, or conversations amongst a family when your mother would join us for extended periods of time. So that's why it all began, and how it all began, and where it all began, of course, was on our back porch.
Yes.
We recorded the first half of that first podcast on my phone,
Oh, gosh.
but there was a recording limit, and we exceeded that, so we had to record the second half on my computer, and the audio was really bad. I tried to fix it up when I put it up on YouTube to little avail. I think I might have some techniques that can correct it further now, but if you go back and listen to that actual raw first upload, it's going to sound kind of rough. But it's there, and it was the start of this, and now, 356 episodes later, our audio quality has improved just slightly.
Look, we're not 100% professionals. And to be fair, that was 10 years ago. Just a dad, a daughter working with stuff from home. It's not great, but it's not the worst.
I'm proud of what we've done. Even if we haven't built a huge audience yet, still, 356 episodes?
Yeah.
We put in the work.
We're having fun doing it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Most times. Real quick, I wanted to say, I did look it up. From what I can tell, the term podcast was first used in 2004. And the first podcast service provider was launched in 2005, I believe.
I wouldn't know. You got the information.
Yes. If I was understanding what I was reading. So about 2004, 2005, podcasts are about as old as GABA.
Yeah. I thought you were about to say God at first. Podcasts go back to the dawn of mankind.
2005.
First God said, let there be light, and then let there be pod. And of course,
two cavemen just sitting down, no coding.
Well, no. The first podcast, of course, was Godcast. That's how Moses really got the 10 Commandments.
Yep.
That week's episode of Godcast.
I love the picture of two cavemen sitting down next to a table, just having a conversation.
I was trying to imagine.
Somehow coding it.
Jesus and all of them just sitting around.
Yeah, now see, that was the primitive days of podcasts. There was no audio there. There's just visual records of that. The cave drawings, those are really, all the cave drawings people hear about, those are actually podcasts.
Yes.
Scribbled on the wall.
Definitely.
And then the first audio component was the Godcast, of course. Our first episode, which debuted on June 18th, 2013, and we didn't record it on June 18th, 2013, and peek behind the curtain, we're not recording this on June 18th, 2023.
We're not?
We're recording this on June 16th, 2023, which, by the way, we should point out is the day before another milestone event, somebody's 18th birthday.
Oh my god, who's?
You.
Me?
So, happy early birthday.
Yay.
18, that's a big deal.
Yep.
You're an adult now!
I assure you nothing will change.
Oh, you mean the crushing weight of the world and all that stuff hasn't hit you yet?
Oh, that hit me 5 years ago.
Oh, damn. You good?
Anyway, the first episode of the podcast was titled Interruptions, if I can interrupt the frivolity over Gabba's birthday.
I feel like we don't have enough interruptions.
We have tried to cut down
that very much was what happened. We would start saying something and the other one would interrupt, and then of course you came in and interrupted us at some point. So a very fitting title, and it's basically continued to be the foundation of the show.
Facts.
We interrupted each other last
of our lives.
Other than perhaps the episodes where we perform audio plays, something pre-scripted. I mean, there's going to be an interruption. Somebody's going to be running their mouth about something. Somebody else is going to jump in with something. Perhaps relevant, perhaps not.
Look, that's just how we talk in real life.
That's how we roll.
Yup.
So, I noticed we put up 3 podcasts that first month. We weren't exactly on a weekly schedule because the first episode went up on June 18th, which was, of course, the day after Dylan's birthday that year. And the day before y'all's youngest brother's birthday, but of course he wasn't born at the time.
No. He came around halfway through the podcast so far.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Almost exactly. One day away.
Yeah, literally one day off.
His birthday is June 19th. He was born June 19th, 2018. So we're just midway through the podcast's existence.
Damn.
We'll have to look and see exactly what podcast we were doing around that time. But for the first podcast, like I said, June 18th was the first episode. The second episode actually went up 4 days later on June 22nd, which was my late mother's birthday.
Yes.
She wasn't late at the time. And in fact, she's appeared on the podcast, one of a few people to make a guest appearance.
Yes.
And then our third episode and the final for that month was June 28th. So we went 4 days between the first 2 and then 6 days between the next 2. So obviously we weren't on much of a regular schedule.
3 shows in 10 days.
In fact, that would actually continue to be the case as we moved along. We did 9 or 10 episodes in that first batch. I'm sorry, I might be a little slow here. I had an unfortunate accident where my computer screen got broken this morning. So I'm having to use an external monitor. So it's a little odd here.
Hashtag oopsie.
It happens.
Yeah. Anyway. But that first year, we only did so many podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just June, July, and August.
I was going to say, I legitimately do not see.
We did the 3 in June. Then we actually did 4 in July.
So pretty much
I'm sorry. That one posted just notes for episode 3.
Ah.
So we did 3 more in July, so we came back on July 3rd, which would have been...
Monsters on her mind.
A little less than a week after the previous one. Then we took most of the month off, came back on July 22nd, and then 4 days later, July 26th, we were back with another episode.
Which was 2 days prior to your birthday.
So very inconsistent with our scheduling early on, and we've gotten more consistent as the years have gone on, even though we've altered schedules here and there. And then we came back with 2 more episodes in August, one on August 9th and one on August 22nd, which was my late father's birthday.
Yes.
So it's nice that we hit both those dates that first year.
Yes.
And those were our first 8 episodes, and that was it for a while.
Wow.
We actually took an extended hiatus.
Break, hiatus, yeah.
And didn't come back until July 2014. So almost a full year later, we came back.
Wow.
With
1 episode?
Yep, 1 episode. At the very
on the
end of
31st.
And actually, sometime around then, one of our first Lost episodes, I think, would appear. Because I believe we recorded 1 more episode in 2013.
Yeah.
But I misplaced it in my computer's files.
Yeah.
And I would have to look around a bit to figure out what it is. But I think it did eventually see the light of day, I'm pretty sure.
Most likely.
It wasn't episode 9 as it was intended to be.
Very.
So we've jumped ahead to August 2014, episode 11. This is our 10th episode, called Trivial Pursuits, where we played a batch of trivia games. And this was our first official, I think, guest episode.
Okay.
As Dylan was on it.
Yay!
My wife, y'all's mother, Casey, was on it, and my mother was on it, tagged in via phone.
Yes.
I think she appeared on one other episode, maybe on the 100th episode. I don't think she ever actually sat in person with us on a podcast, but this was her debut on the podcast. And one of our earliest trivia games. Trivia is something I enjoy in real life, and I've always liked to bring it in the podcast. I have ready to walk down memory lane. Why don't we go back and actually take a look at some of these? I don't necessarily want to do every single episode, because that would take a while, but we can...
Reasonable. 356 episodes.
It feels like a place to start, you know?
Yeah.
We already talked about the first episode where Dylan made an appearance. Second episode... the description was a father and daughter do their best to overcome a lack of interesting subject matter. It's called What Do You Want to Talk About? And that was an episode we recorded when Dylan and your mother were out for the day and you and I stayed home.
We went to a yard sale that day, didn't we?
We went to a yard sale, we watched Mythbusters, we ordered some pizza and did a podcast. It was a very full day.
Yes.
Pizza!
But,
not for you.
Yeah, you weren't here for the pizza.
Yeah, you gotta go to like a water park or something.
But the father and daughter lead into the intros. I try to keep consistent as our template because I still want to go back to making the title make sense.
Yeah.
I have at various times thought about changing the title of the show, but I feel like we're so entrenched at this point.
Exactly.
I feel like, there's a good bit of equity in the name at this point.
Yes.
That if we need to, we can change it. But for now, I want to stick with it. There is actually another podcast called LexiCon Valley Podcast that our podcast has been confused for on occasion.
Really?
But I feel like they're Lexicon Valley, we're Lexicon. And again, we've been doing this for 10 years with the same name. You can go back and see. This has always been us. So
yes.
I did think about trying to tag it into our YouTube imprint, Vidiocy, which we use for streaming as well at twitch.tv/Vidiocy, and call it like Audio Vidiocy. I thought about Audiocy too, but at the time I was considering the change, there was like a new audio store, an online audio store, was just coming out with that name, so I didn't want to have any conflict there.
Reasonable.
So we may change the title at some point. It doesn't really make as much sense, and I feel like I kind of have to explain it, and even in the descriptions, most episodes, I use that as a way of making it make sense. But again, I feel like there's so much equity built into it. After almost a full year's worth of episodes, and by a full year, I mean, I don't mean a year of doing it weekly. I mean, you could listen to one of our episodes every day for a full year.
Yeah.
We're only 9 episodes away from that now, 10 for a leap year.
Yep.
So, but I do want to point out episode 3 really quickly, At the Movies. This is where we introduced a weekly feature, or a per episode feature called the High Five.
Yeah.
High Five.
Which was our personal top 5 list, usually with an honorable mention.
Can anybody do a top 5 off the top of the head?
We would always introduce with a high five and an audible hand slap. I could, but I don't need to, because I actually did.
You prepared one?
I did.
Oh, no.
I prepared a special high five.
God, but we didn't come prepared.
I was going to introduce it later in the episode, but I guess we could do it now.
Top 5 fingers. Number 1, my middle finger.
I didn't ask you guys to do them because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But I thought we should do it because I introduced it back in 2013 because I had this idea that we needed a gimmick for every show to try to help people. Like if they didn't necessarily enjoy the ramblings we had, at least we could present, hey, this is something you can focus on. We would drop it. I don't know. I don't know how quickly we dropped it. We certainly did drop it because it started to become not a crutch necessarily, or not even too onerous, but it was just like, we really don't need this. It's not necessarily adding that much. And some weeks it was a strain to make it tie into whatever the topic was, especially the weeks we didn't really have a topic.
Yeah, I was going to say, we revisited some.
We have. We did. We came back on the 100th episode and did a special one. We've done special ones every now and then.
I was going to say, I remember we did top 5 movies on an episode. That one?
That was
okay.
That one. That was the very
I remember that list.
Barbies.
Yep. Entirely Barbies. Now, we revisited that one, didn't we?
We did. That's what we did on the 100th episode.
Was it still mostly Barbie?
I don't think so.
I think I changed it some.
Well, that was the thing. We each took one previous top 5 that we wanted to revisit, that we realized that we either changed our opinions on or we'd overlooked something at the time. You redid your top 5 movies. I think I redid my top 5 fictional characters. I either did my top 5 fictional characters or top 5 fictional villains. Because I realized there had been at least one major oversight in my list.
I'll do my top 5 Hollywood daddies.
Feel free.
I don't think I can come up with all 5. Let's see: Pedro Pascal, Tom Hiddleston, Sebastian Stan. Gotta figure out 2 more.
You're supposed to count them down.
Yeah, I don't know the order yet.
As well. Well, while you think about that, since we brought up, I came up with my. I think I do want to save mine though.
Okay.
I think it'll mean more by the time we get to the end of the episode.
That's fair. Real quick, I want to say I bet.
Well, let me ask you all what you think though. I came up with a high 5 episodes, LexiCon episodes.
We can recap with that.
Should I do it now or should I do it later? Because we'll probably mention these as we go along. So would it mean more then, or should I just give a little preview with it now?
I'm gonna leave that up to you.
What do you think?
I think it
Dylan?
makes sense.
You think what makes sense?
Either way.
Great.
I was interrupted, damn it!
Look, I'm sticking to the theme.
Yeah, going back to what I was trying to say prior to interruptions. I was gonna say
Daddies. Hey, Daddy.
When we revisited the movie list, when I did, I
was there too.
I feel like I could bet that my top 3, at least definitely made the list, were The Gold King, Mean Girls, and still Barbie and a Fashion Fairy Tale.
Yeah, I actually have the original High 5 movies here on the website.
Yeah.
I don't think I was listing the High 5s online at that point, so we'd probably have to go back and actually listen to the episode. And we could have done that ahead of time. I thought about really pouring through the episode and trying to find clips, but I thought it'd just be more fun to go off the top of our head, because some of our best episodes are the ones where we just sat here and riffed, And so I thought I wanted to bring that spirit back for this episode. But I was going to say, too, another gimmick of our show throughout the years has been extolling Tom Hanks to be our celebrity, our first and biggest celebrity fan. And I'm thinking, considering the content of this episode so far, maybe we should extend that and try to get Pedro Pascal to be our celebrity
that
fan.
works. I was about to say something about Tom Hanks that I won't say.
So I was just going to make a plea to Pedro Pascal really quick. Hey, Daddy.
Oh, gosh. I was going to say, okay, on that list, the honorable mention, just because he's a celebrity podcast listener, Tom Hanks.
America's Dad, Tom Hanks.
Yep. Oh, gosh. If I redid the movies yet again, Barbie, Fashion Fairy Tale would still make the top 5.
The fun thing is, I'm not sure mine would have changed at all from way back in 2013. Back then,
that's fair. You were in your 30s. I was 12.
What is that supposed to mean?
You had more things figured out.
You can't change, old man. And you know what they said in Freebird, you can't change.
You can absolutely change at any point of time
Skinner
in your life.
was right, man.
But, you were just a full adult. You knew yourself more. You had more things figured out. You had experienced more. I was 12.
So for the record, my high 5 at the time, my honorable mention was the Royal Tenenbaums. Number 5 was Untitled, which was the director's cut of Almost Famous. Then Clerks 2, The Shawshank Redemption. Tom Hanks is That Thing You Do, and Mallrats. The top 3 would not have changed. Really, the top 4 probably wouldn't have. I still love Almost Famous, particularly the director's cut. I still love the Royal Tenenbaums. I might swap in Ocean's 11 for one of those. I could even be convinced to put in Endgame just because that was such a fantastic experience.
Endgame is great.
But by and large, those are still 6 of my all-time favorite movies. And then, yeah, your list is there as well. There's
a problem with that list, too.
There's a
Fashion Fairy Tale didn't make the cut.
There's no honorable mention. Unless I just forgot to type it up for some
Barbie
strange
as
reason.
the Island Princess? What even is that movie?
I feel as
I
though,
don't remember that one.
looking at what time of year and everything is, this was roughly
Well,
around the
read it off really
time.
quickly since it's there.
Real quick, this was
Okay, I'll read it off. Number
I'm
5,
sorry.
Barbie and a Perfect Christmas. Number 4, Barbie is the Princess and the Pop Star. Number 3, Barbie and a Mermaid Tale 2. Number 2, Barbie and a Mermaid Tale 1. Number 1, Barbie as the Island Princess.
No
Yes.
Fashion Fairy Tale, no Diamond Palace, Crystal Palace.
Yeah, that's
No Barbie does
Diamond
Dallas.
Castle.
Not Pop Jam.
I was going to say though,
That's
basing
when Barbie
my
uttered the
guess
immortal line, "Hey,
off
Daddy."
of the time of year this is and whatnot, this was around the time Galba and we were sleeping in the living room and I was making you watch a Barbie movie like almost every night, except for when we'd watch a Sims 3 Let's Play, because this was prior to me being a Sims fan. This was prior to
That
me
was
having
the summer
games
when
and
y'all were
stuff.
playing the living room as your own.
Yes. So this was probably based on whatever movies we had just watched, like the last few
Quick
nights.
question.
It doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What movie is Barbie as the Island Princess? I
That,
don't remember that.
yeah, that's an
It's
older
literally right in
one.
the title. She's the fucking Island Princess. What part of that don't you
That
get?
is not what I remember.
Okay,
at
she's
all.
a princess that I don't remember all the details of the story because I probably haven't watched it since that summer. But she's like, she like grew up on an island or whatever. She's like lost princess. She gets found, all that stuff. You
Sounds
know?
like the plot of every Barbie movie.
No, but now okay, Mermaid Tale that would still make the list because that is one of my favorites. But Barbie Diaries would be on there. Diamond Castle would be
Yeah.
on there. Fashion
Got the
Fairy Tale
Diamond
has
Castle on
Fashion Fairy Tale has to be on there because I've watched it so much and I made you watch it so much. I memorized that entire dialogue. I'd put it on in like French or German or other things some nights and know exactly what was
I
still
almost
being
memorized
said.
at least half of My Little Pony Equestria Girls Rainbow Walks.
Nice, yeah.
That's my
that
favorite
that's
Equestria Girls movie.
and that's the thing. Like that would still make my top 5 now.
Top 5 Equestria Girls character.
Not the main 6. Like, damn, who gets cut? Actually, you're probably cutting more than one from the main 6.
My top 5 would be like, of Equestria Girls characters would be like Pinkie Pie,
Obviously.
Sunset Shimmer,
Okay.
Equestria Girls Twilight, like the
Oh, yeah.
like human Twilight.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 Twilights in those movies.
Yes.
Who else? Who would be next?
Who's Fluttershy?
Probably Fluttershy.
I was gonna say.
And then probably Rainbow Dash.
Obviously, I'd have to put
Applejack
Applejack near the...
getting cut out.
Applejack would have to be near the top of my list.
Is Spike even in those movies?
He's a dog.
Well, yeah, but there's no Spike. There's a Spike in the first couple ones. But once you get to human Twilight,
Yeah.
Spike disappears.
Yeah. Guess she
I
hasn't
think-
gotten a dog yet.
Does she have him as a dog?
I have no
I
idea.
don't remember.
Me neither.
We should watch them again. Good movies.
I
They should do Equestria Girls for Gen 5.
Did you also say Gen Z?
Gen 6, almost. Not Gen-
I was about to say, wait a second. Equestria Girls is what Gen Z grew up with.
But they should do Equestria Girls for Gen
Friendship,
5.
magic, and whatnot. They
Imagine it's Gen 5
might.
and it's still all the same characters.
I remember not that long ago there was a supposed leak of some humanoid dolls of the characters, I thought.
I would love more Equestria Girls.
So yeah, we might get something like that.
And so you thought you wouldn't have anything to talk about on this episode.
Well, that's because I'm not talking about the podcast. I'm talking
While
about
you've been rambling on about My Little Pony and whatnot,
Did you find out My Little Pony episode?
I haven't yet. We'll get there.
Okay.
I did find the episode that I did reference that we had recorded in 2013 originally that didn't make that original batch of episodes.
Yeah.
It actually it should have been episode 9. It actually finally saw the light of day as episode 15 in September 2014.
On the 18th?
On the 18th, that's right.
Nice.
So that's one of our first ever sort of lost episodes, if you were. There's actually a
One of
number.
them.
There's actually a number of those.
We just have a category on the website, the lost episodes.
We do. If you a couple years later, April 15th. Or, I'm sorry, April 3rd, 2015. And we're only up to episode 27 at this point, so you can see we're not very consistent. I mean, this should have been almost 2 years worth of episodes, so if we had been a weekly podcast like we had endeavored to be at first, we should be up to like 100 episodes at this
Yeah.
point. Even with that hiatus at the end of 2013, we still should have been way above this. So
Yeah. It took us some
very
time.
inconsistent in the early years. I think around 2015 or 16 is when we first dedicated ourselves to being a weekly show, and we've cut back to a... is the term bi-weekly or
Yes.
Okay, because that sounds to me
I
like
think.
it should be twice a week. we're an every other week podcast at the moment.
Alternating weeks.
Although actually, this episode is going up right a week after the last one because we wanted to hit our anniversary. So for now, we're going to be an every week podcast, then a couple weeks off, then another episode podcast, and then we'll get back on schedule. But episode 27, which went up on April 3rd, 2015, is the first official Lost episode. From the description, finally unearthed from the LexiCon vault, we present the fabled Lost episode, originally recorded in July 2014, when a father and daughter were joined by a mother and son, aka Casey and Dylan,
yes,
for a late night / early morning chat about their favorite video games, YouTube, Twitter, and etc. et al. So that was the first ever Lost episode, but it was not the last ever Lost episode.
No.
To me, when I think of the Lost episode, I always think of the second half of the Phantom Menace commentary.
Is the Lost episode.
This was at a time when we were doing commentary tracks for all of the Star Wars films, and I guess if we did them in order, this would have been the first of them, but I'm not sure if we did them in order. I'll try to maybe find it when y'all are vamping later, but at any rate, when we did the Phantom Menace episode, we decided we would do a drinking game.
Poor choices were made.
I was the only one of legal age to drink alcohol, so I was doing alcoholic shots and drinking an alcoholic beverage.
Freaking grape juice.
Alex and Dylan were doing shots of grape juice during the game, and by the, of course, the Phantom Menace is like a 2.5-hour movie. So and we put them up in we did it as 2 parts.
Yes.
Because I don't know, for whatever reason we felt like we could stretch it out, or it was too much for one episode. But we did some of those longer commentaries in stages. Yes. So we did the first half of the movie and then the second half of the movie. And the first half went fine.
But by the time we got to the second half,
by partway through the second half, I was out on my feet and Alex was just over grape juice, and there was a lot of silence and Dylan just trying to vamp. So
I'm pretty sure he was humming the theme at one point.
We decided to re-record that episode, but we did finish that episode, and it actually would go up. It did see the light of day. That episode is somewhere in the archives. I'm not sure what number it is, but there was a week where we didn't have another episode, and we actually put that up. So you can actually hear the lost half of the Phantom Menace commentary. And, of course, we re-recorded the commentary proper as well. That was one of a number of episodes we've actually re-recorded, but it's the only one I think that people have heard the original version of.
Yeah, probably.
I can't remember if we ever had to re-record because of technical issues. It's certainly a possibility, but a few episodes do come to mind as having been re-recorded just for personal reasons. The first one, I believe, would have been episode 50. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find it here in the archive so I can be exactly right about it. So let's see, I'm in January 2016, so maybe December 2015.
Yeah.
But this was this may have been our first commentary episode for a commercial property. Okay, I'm sorry, it's episode 51.
Okay.
Oh, because episode 50 is our review of The Force Awakens, which I think is definitely one of our banner episodes. That might be the point the podcast really hit its zenith. But episode 51 is when you and I decided to do a podcast for my favorite movie of all time, Mallrats. A podcast, not a podcast. We did a commentary for it.
We know we're going to do a commentary for clearly my favorite movie of all time if I keep putting it in the top 5.
I'll have nothing. Unless we're doing a drinking game or something, I'm not sure how much I'll have to say. And you see how well that went.
I mean, you could say so much about Ken in that movie, at least.
What makes you think I'm a Ken stan?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to be said about Ken in the movie.
But I think episode 51 was the first time that we did a commentary for some commercial property with which we had no particular association other than fandom. Mm-hmm. Now, our first actual commentary episode, I believe, is when we did commentary for our short films that you can see on our YouTube channel at VDCTV. No Mail, Knuckleheads the Movie, How to Make a Movie or Not, etc. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure we have an episode early on. I thought it was around episode 10, but that was the trivia episode. But I'm pretty sure back in the archives there's an episode where we did commentaries for our movies. If there's not, there's going to be. But I'm 99% sure there is. But I think this is the first time that we actually did a commentary for somebody else's movie. And we were inspired by... I know Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier had actually done a commentary on the DVD for Roadhouse, I believe.
Yeah.
And then Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin on what was Kevin's podcast, Fat Man on Batman, now is Batman Beyond. Or Fat Man Beyond, I apologize. He and Mark did commentaries for a majority of the Batman films, and they've done others since, and Kevin and Ralph would end up doing commentaries for the Batman 66, well, colloquially called Batman 66, but the old 60s Batman TV show. They were doing commentaries for every episode during the early parts of the pandemic. But this was our first attempt at doing a commentary for, again, something that we didn't produce.
Yes.
And we were just fans of. But I made the mistake in having you watch it for the first time while we were doing the commentary. So you had an earbud in listening to the movie, and we were trying to do commentary, and it just didn't work out all that well.
Yeah. We learned our lesson, though.
So once you had heard it, we went ahead and re-recorded it. And, of course, the first version has never seen the light of day. Probably doesn't even exist on any of my hard drives anymore.
Possibly.
But in an interesting twist, we've actually done a second Mallrats commentary because Dylan was not a regular cast member at the time.
Yes.
Just a year or so ago, we came back and did another Mallrats commentary to include Dylan. It's probably around the time of a Mallrats anniversary because we try to hit things on important dates like that. So Mallrats was released in 95, I want to say. So maybe in 2020 we did it.
All right.
Maybe not, but we definitely did a second Mallrats commentary. But this is the original commentary, which was itself re-recorded, and then we did a second one just for our own edification.
Yes. I would just like to acknowledge real quick that our most common special guest has joined us.
Mikey the cat.
Mikey, can you say hi?
She is completely silent.
Yeah, no. She's not talking now.
Now you don't have anything to say?
Nope. Alright.
But along with that Mallrats episode, I can think of a few others. When we did a commentary for another movie, Labyrinth,
Yes.
right after my mother's death, it was our tribute episode to her because that was one of her favorite movies. I was not satisfied with the first version of it. It was fine, I guess, but it just didn't feel like we were on our A game, and it didn't feel like a fitting tribute. So we came back and re-recorded that. And again, people have only heard the second version of it. I don't think we even have a recording of the first version anymore. And more recently, when we watched an episode of World Championship Wrestling's Thunder that I had attended live back in 1998, we recorded about half the show, or maybe a little more, and I decided to call it because that was when I had my ear was really clogged up. I could hardly hear y'all, so it was making for a miserable experience, and it was hard for me to play off y'all and whatnot. So we canceled that and came back and re-recorded it. So
sometimes things take more than one time.
At least those 3 episodes have been re-recorded, and like we talked about the episode 1 commentary where we re-recorded, but we actually did put out the first version. Actually, not that long ago, we had an episode that we recorded, and then it was lost because the computer that was saved on had a technical issue.
Yes.
And it didn't. Part of it was reacting to some old stuff of mine, and it didn't feel like there was any point to trying to recapture that. So that one's never been redone. Can you guys remember any others that we started and had to redo, or was there any that had?
No.
I know in the Lord of the Rings commentary series there were some technical issues, but at that point it was done, and we really kind of needed to get it up, so we just went with it. I can't off the top of my head remember any others that we had to redo for any reason, or any that we did and then just didn't put up.
Yeah, me neither.
I can't even remember a case where we recorded an episode and then something came out like, no, we got to do this instead, because even in those cases we probably still used the original one.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so as I say, episode 51 was December 30th, 2015, so we're a little over 2 years into the podcast now, and Dylan's still not a regular contributor to the podcast. Do you happen to remember on the top of your head when you actually joined the show, Dylan?
No idea.
Quite some years ago.
I mean, you would definitely pop in for an episode here and there.
Yeah. It's been at least a few years.
Here's a year later, Dylan's on the show.
Prior to
but then again,
COVID.
Here's October 2016, and it's just Alex and me, so...
Yeah. Maybe it was around 2018.
Okay, but there's the aforementioned second half of the Phantom Menace commentary. I think maybe Dylan was joining us for specific episodes back then, so we'd have him on to do the Star Wars commentary, the Lord of the Rings commentary. So it's definitely later 2010s when he became an official cast member.
Yes.
We've done a number of commentaries, speaking of them. We've done commentaries for all the Harry Potter movies. We did 2 for Deathly Hallows because we went back and did it on his 10th anniversary. Just because I felt like I had some... I'd rewatched it again recently, or I'd reread the book, and I'm like, I got even more I could say about this. We did commentary for... We haven't done it for all the Star Wars movies. We have not done Rise of Skywalker. We've done the previous 8. I think we did Rogue One. We've done all the Lord of the Rings movies. We haven't done the Hobbit movies, because why would we? We've done Mallrats. I'm not sure if we've done any other Kevin Smith movies. We did try to do a commentary for a commentary with Clerks 2. Clerks 2 actually has 3 different commentary tracks on the DVD, and we actually listened to one and tried to do commentary on it for an episode. It wasn't great, But I think it was a fun attempt.
Okay.
So I'm glad that we did it.
I'm just gonna say, if ever this podcast ends, that's what I'm saying when it goes out.
It wasn't great, but it was
a fun time. Yup.
So I think that was cool. We've done a lot of Marvel movies, of course. Certainly not everyone, but we've done a number.
Haven't we recorded podcasts with at least one episode with just Avengers on in the background?
We did. In the early days, I was fond of, especially when we didn't have a specific topic and we were just rambling on about this or that, or we had a topic, but I knew it wasn't something where the whole show was going to be concentrated on it. We'd throw Avengers, the original Avengers, not the British spy TV show, but the first Marvel Avengers movie. We'd throw that on in the background, and sometimes we'd make some comments here or there about it.
Yeah.
And then we finally did do an actual Avengers commentary in 2022.
Took us almost the full 10 years.
Well, that marked its 20th anniversary, so it made sense to a degree to do it then. I think that's right, because I think it was 2012. I know it's been the last year or so. So that was fun. I know we've done Infinity War. I'm not sure if we've done Endgame or not. I think we have, because I think we did it. We did a movie March in March 2020. I wanted to have kind of a theme month, and that was the idea, is we do commentary. So we did Short Circuit. We did Jersey Girl. There's another Kevin Smith movie we've done a commentary for, Jersey Girl. And I know we did a Marvel movie that month. So there's a good chance it was Endgame.
Nice.
Because I feel like it was something big, and we'd already done Infinity War, and we hadn't done the original Avengers yet. But we've done a number of commentary tracks, and I feel like they're kind of hit or miss. I feel like they're one of our signature shows, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's nice to have something on which to focus the entire time. We know what we're talking about. But I think sometimes we don't necessarily have enough to say. Like, there's not enough to joke about. And sometimes we might have information to impart about the movie, but it's also like, how much do we want to say? Because it's not really, it's second and third hand information. Like, oh, I heard Kevin say this about this scene, or I've heard this about that scene, or I can read this about that scene. And that's all totally valid, but I mean, I'm not sure how entertaining it can be.
We're not here to give a report on what other people have said about the movies.
Of course, we can also share our own experience with it. Like, hey, like with Beetlejuice, for instance. Like, I remember it. It was the first movie I noticed being on a theater marquee for a long period of time. Like, my school bus would drive past one of the local movie theaters, and I remember seeing Beetlejuice on the marquee for a month or more. And that was the first time I really noticed a movie sticking in the movie theater for a long time. And that's opposed to Labyrinth, which we talked about earlier, which is the only movie I've ever seen be on a marquee one day and the next day it was gone. Which doesn't say anything about the quality of the movie. Labyrinth
did your mom go see it in theaters?
We did not see Labyrinth in theaters.
Damn.
Again, it barely stayed in theaters, apparently.
Well, if you were there that one day.
Yeah, I guess we missed that one. But I commentaries, like I say, they're fun. If I had to think about our commentaries, I don't know. I think the Harry Potter ones were really good.
I remember
the Star Wars ones were fun too. Don't get me wrong. The Lost one notwithstanding, but
yeah, Harry Potter,
it's fairly entertaining.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the first movie. I think it was when we were doing the commentary. Of course, we were watching it, and we had the subtitles or the closed captioning on, and we noticed a line that we had never noticed before because we don't typically watch with those. It was
It was Petunia.
Yeah.
It was when Hagrid had come into the hut.
Yeah.
And he was saying, a car crash killed Lily and James Potter. And Petunia says very low, with a very low voice, had to tell him something to that effect.
Yeah.
I remember that as well.
It's one of those little details totally missed without the captioning. I noticed that in a show I was watching recently. The captioning had a line for a character off screen. I could not hear a character say anything other than the ones on screen.
Yeah, sometimes you can find interesting things in the captions. Sometimes things that aren't really even there. Especially if you're watching YouTube captions.
Oh, gosh.
YouTube captions can definitely be fun.
I'll put on... Obviously, we use captions for the podcast because we want to know what's going on, but we don't want the audio playing. And occasionally I'll go back and use captions if I'm trying to find out specifically something that was said. But I don't really enjoy watching stuff with... Now, if it's in a language I don't speak, I need the captions. Yes. And that's fine. I can live with that. In that case, I guess it's subtitles. But I don't like having captions on in a show I'm watching because then I find myself reading instead of listening to the show.
I pretty much always have the captions on. Just because I find that I have trouble processing what they're saying. So, like, I'm hearing the sound, but I'm not
See,
I can't tell
I have
what
the
they're
opposite
saying.
effect because if I'm reading the caption, I'm having trouble paying attention to what's being said.
Yeah,
I'm comprehending it, but I'm also missing some of the performance and some of the context
Yeah.
and some of the nuance of the performance. And also, sometimes the caption will run slightly ahead or slightly behind. And if you're reading it ahead, it sort of blows something if you read it first. So I can't stand watching stuff with caption unless there's a specific reason for it. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
So,
captions definitely help me understand, because sometimes, like, yes, they're having an intense conversation. I have no idea what's going on.
I also realized that I like using captions and stuff because I don't typically have my volume up super high, but with shows like Game of Thrones, I'd have it fairly low and it would be quiet and I'd be sitting like, I can't hear shit.
I've had it happen with songs so many times where it's like, I'm listening to this music, I have no idea what they're saying in it, though.
Spotify offers lyrics to most
Like,
songs, not all.
Oh,
of
the
them.
lyrics of the
Google
song
typically has lyrics.
was this? Oh, I thought it was something completely different.
Commonly misheard lyrics. I was going to say
I can't even miss it. All lyrics.
maybe at some point we should load up YouTube. Not for this episode or
Also,
whatever, but we
poke
should load
myself
up
in the
YouTube.
eye.
Load up our episodes. See what YouTube tells us what we said.
On LexiCon?
Yes.
It'd be worth a shot. It might be too clear to where we don't have much to
Maybe.
comment on. That'd be something that would be good to do on Twitch.
Yes.
Where there's actual visual component to it.
Yes.
Like we put episodes up on YouTube, of course, but there's just the thumbnail for the episode or whatever, unless it's something we recorded with visuals, like when we do the episodes on Twitch. That would actually be a good episode to do on Twitch sometime.
Oh my gosh,
I'd
my
be down
hood
for that.
Pikachu.
Yeah, I pulled up some of our thumbnails, so I thought we'd talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to get back to talking about the commentaries. That Lost episode of the Phantom Menace commentary, the second half of the commentary that we had to re-record,
Yes.
the so-called Lost episode, the one that would show up as a special episode later on, that is the only episode of the podcast that I've ever listened to start to finish.
Wow.
Obviously, I hear them to a degree when I'm editing them, but I don't necessarily. I try to make very copious notes while we're recording, so I can go back and don't have to listen to the whole thing partly because I don't mind hearing my voice. It is a little weird because obviously your voice sounds different when it's recorded than it sounds to you in your own head, so that always throws you off a little bit. But I enjoy listening to myself do my art. I can listen to myself and say, oh yeah, that's cool. My only thing is I'll always hear like one little thing I'll say. I'm like, oh, I could have said that better. Or I'll hear something that I edited a certain way. I'm like, man, I could have edited that slightly better. And if I sit there and listen to the whole episode, it's going to take me weeks to get to, because I'm going to refine. I'm like, no, we got to go back and re-record this part. So it's better for me if I don't do that.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think I've listened to any episode start to finish.
Well, no, you've heard that episode because
That one?
when we went to Wisconsin in 2016.
Yes.
Well, yeah, no, I know we've been to Wisconsin twice in the life of the podcast. I'm trying to remember when did I say that episode was even up originally?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's when we went there in 2016 that I got to the point. I like listening to music in the car, but I like listening to podcasts in the car too, especially if you guys are sort of vibing doing your own thing. It's sort of like you're having a buddy in the car with you.
Sorry.
So I tend to play a lot of podcasts when we go on long trips, and when we took a trip from the southeastern U.S. up to Wisconsin, I had a spate of podcasts, and that was one of the first ones we listened to was that episode. I had that on my phone. I'm like, we're going to check this out. Why not?
Yeah, and I actually stayed up for that entire ride.
And that's the only reason. And that was early in the ride too.
Yeah.
And that it definitely was 2016 because back then we got up early and left early morning. And when we went back there a few years later after Mom had passed away, we left in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And the early part of that drive was through the dark, and it was so foggy in the mountains. I was like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, so we actually listened to it in that car ride together. So you guys have heard that episode as well, and that's probably
probably the only one.
For the Undertaker episode we did in honor of his retirement in 2020. I think it was 2020. Yeah, that makes sense. It was 30 years of Undertaker when he came out and retired on Survivor Series after having debuted on Survivor Series 1990. It wasn't a technical issue. It was a mistake.
I dropped my phone.
That's twice now.
Yeah, it is.
If you had two in the pool, you're looking good right now, but it could go higher because we're not finished yet.
Oh no.
But the Undertaker episode, and it was about a 2-hour episode because we watched several of his classic matches and did commentary for them. We had made a mistake in our commentary. There was some fact that we were repeating over and over that we had in our head, but we had it wrong.
Uh-huh.
I think it may have been the date of his debut. We may have been saying Survivor Series 1991, which made no sense since we were doing it in 2020 for the 30-year anniversary. But there was something that we had gotten wrong, and I knew it was something that we could have said multiple times in the episode. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to have to go back and listen to the whole episode myself, so we split it up, where I listened to like the first half, or the first third, you took a third, and Dylan took a third, and we all listened through to find anything that needed to be edited. So we've all heard large portions of that episode.
Yeah. I was going to say, to be fair, except for episodes of podcasts that you've put on in the cars while we've been on vacations, I never listened to a podcast all the way through. I'm really not.
Dylan and I used to listen to Hollywood Babylon, Kevin Smith and Ralph Garvin's podcast. You know, I love music too. I really do. It's one of my favorite things. I've often said music is my religion. But I don't know. And like I say, if I'm really vibing with somebody and we're hanging out and having fellowship, I enjoy listening to music together. But if especially like a long car ride, you kind of zone out. You're doing on your phone. I like the podcast because it just feels like you got a buddy there chatting.
I was gonna say the closest thing I've done to listening to a podcast, instead of putting on background music or whatever, would probably be the times I'd be like sitting in my bed working on a commission or whatever I was doing, and I'd put on an episode of Good Mythical Morning.
Yeah, our podcast notwithstanding, and I think it's totally worth listening to. Like I say, it's just a personal thing. Like, I could listen to it, and I could definitely see myself listening to it on a car ride. But even then, I'm going to be critical. It's like, oh, why did I say it like that? I could have said it slightly better,
Yeah.
Or why didn't I make that edit there instead of there? But I definitely encourage anybody to check it out. I think we try to make it entertaining.
I think it's worth listening, especially if you enjoy podcasts.
Especially podcasts about pop culture, which wasn't initially our intention.
No.
It was just like we were going to have conversations about whatever, but we quickly gravitated toward pop culture because that was something that interested both of us, and it was easy to talk about. But anyway, our podcast notwithstanding, talking about some of my favorite podcasts, of course, I was a huge fan of Smodcast and the podcast that grew out from that, Hollywood Babylon, with Ralph Garman. Tell 'em Steve Dave, which was Brian Quinn from Practical Jokers, along with Walt Flanagan and Brian Johnson, friends of Kevin Smith who were in the show Comic Book Men and have been in a lot of his movies. And their spin-off episode called Puck Nuts, where they ostensibly talked hockey, but would often branch off into other things. When they were joined by Brian Quinn wasn't on that show, but Brian Johnson and Walt Flanagan were, along with Ming Chen and Mike, whose last name I can't remember. Mike Zapsik, who also worked, or probably still works, at the Secret Stash, and Sunday Jeff, who also from the Secret Stash, and of Fat Man on Batman, which was later a podcast of Kevin's that introduced me to Mark Bernardin, who's one of my favorite creators at this point. And he did a podcast with his wife, Jennifer +1. He did a podcast with Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, which I guess they still do. I don't listen to podcasts. I still listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've severely narrowed down the amount of podcasts to which I listen. I'm really into wrestling podcasts at this point. And if you've listened to our podcast at all, professional wrestling is probably my absolute all-time favorite form of entertainment.
Yeah.
So I very much like wrestling podcasts. For a while, I listened to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, which he doesn't do anymore. For a while, I listened to Chris Jericho's podcast until political differences caused me to stop doing that. I like Jim Ross's podcast, which continues in at least a form on Conrad Thompson's podcast network, which I still check in with it occasionally. I'll occasionally listen to Tony Schiavone's podcast. That's actually one of my more regular ones, but it depends on the topic. Tony Schiavone actually dissed our podcast one time on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah. I made a comment about their show, What Happened When, and I even said in the comment that What Happened When had usurped Something to Wrestle With at the time as my favorite podcast, but I was not complimentary about that week's episode. It was their episode on Super Bowl 2000, and Tony was actually fine on the episode. Conrad got really annoying on the episode, and they kind of bickered like an old married couple in an unentertaining way.
Uh-huh.
And I just mentioned that, and I actually thought it was it was a critical post, but I thought it was constructive criticism. And he came back with something like, I guess it was too much like, he must have clicked on my bio and looked to see that, because I had LexiCon podcast in my bio. Because otherwise, unless Tony's listening.
Oh no, we got the celebrity listening wrong.
Which wouldn't make much sense.
Him.
But he made some comment like, I guess we were too much like LexiCon podcast. Ever heard of it? Nobody else has either. And I was like, well, more people have now, Tony. Thanks.
Wow.
But that notwithstanding, I still check out his podcast fairly regularly. I still like Bruce Pritchard's podcast, Something to Wrestle With, that he does with Conrad. That's one I'll listen to every week. Mick Foley, a.k.a. Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love. He does a podcast with Conrad. That's an every week listen. And, of course, Jim Cornette's 2 podcasts that he does with Brian Last, The Experience and The Drive-Thru. Those are my bread and butter podcasts at this point.
Nice. I I'm sorry, while we were going on about,
And I have listened to bits and pieces other places. I listened to an episode of Nerdist because Alton Brown was on it. Adam Savage did a podcast, at least for a while. I don't know if he still does. I've listened to select episodes of that. You know, I'll check in with the podcast here and there if there's a topic I'm interested in or persons on it that I'm interested in hearing from.
Nice. I believe I tried listening to Tyler Oakley's podcast at one point in time. I didn't finish episode 1.
I enjoy it. I like long form talk, and I like, especially if I'm going about my day doing other stuff. And again, music's totally viable, and it's totally worth having on. But I don't know, it's like you got a buddy there you're having a conversation with, and that's why I particularly like shows that are at least 2 people. Like just one person doing a show and just monologuing the whole time. That gets a little less interesting, which is part of the reason I've never attempted to do one solo, even though sometimes there's topics I want to cover that you all have no interest in, or y'all aren't available, or I feel like, you know, y'all aren't into it at that moment. I'm like, maybe I should just spin off and do my own thing. But I've
considered doing something kind of like that, but with like a PNG tuber Toka thing.
Well, I like the idea of it. Like, our podcast is built on conversation with Lexi, conversation between a father and daughter, pop culture conversations between a father and his mostly grown children, as it's called now. And I guess I'll have to amend that now that Dylan's turning 18. But I like that conversation, you know, and I like feeling part of that conversation, or you know. So I really enjoy the medium of podcasts. I'm glad they exist, and I'm glad we've been able to do it. So,
yes.
As much as I love music and as much as I love pro wrestling, you know, podcasts have really gotten right up there. Some of my favorite pieces of entertainment.
Yes. I was going to say, okay, the first thing I was going to say earlier on when we were going on about podcasts, say, remember when I did like a Twitter Minute thing?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
Actually, now that you mention it, we had Lexi's Twitter Minute.
Yeah.
I have no... do you have something up there to tell us when it was or something?
No, I don't know what era of the podcast that was. I did have Twitter open, though, just in case.
You know, and I mean, as Twitter loses its cultural relevancy, I'm not sure it would play that well now, but yeah, for a while we had I guess so you could address things that I had no interest in.
I don't know. That's when I get a break. I remember the Kardashians got brought up some.
Get to take a quick drink or something here.
Yeah. If we tried that today, going to my For You page on Twitter, it would be all politics and Taylor Swift. If anybody's curious of what I'm apparently interested in on Twitter, though I'm pretty sure I don't follow anything to do with any of that.
For me, Twitter, and nowadays it's a little different, but in my height of being a Twitter user, which would have been like 2016 to, you know, probably right up until old Muskie bought it.
Yeah.
It was man of the 2 Ps, politics and porn.
Oh, God.
Not gonna lie, that's what Twitter was best for me. And we can expand to 3, because pop culture, because I'd follow people I was interested in, like, you know, the aforementioned Kevin Smith or Mark Bernardin or what have you. So that's pretty much the use for Twitter. And we can expand it to 4 now because promotion, because, you know, I have a Twitter page for our YouTube channel, Vidiocy, and of course for the podcast.
Yes.
So that's pretty much that's what Twitter means to me. That's what Twitter means to me.
Pretty much the only reason I go on Twitter is for Toby Fox's tweets.
Gabba's just there for Toby Fox.
The new segment, Gabba Talks Toby Fox. Gabba's Toby Fox Minute. I was scrolling through the... You okay?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was going to shout out a podcast, but I can't freaking find the creator of it now.
LexiCon podcast, don't shout it out.
No, I was going to say, it's actually cool. I haven't fully listened to it because... Not yet. But,
some tit for tat here.
I was going to shout it out because it's, like, really cool, even though I haven't really listened to it. Again, just, I'm not big on podcasts. But it's a Toka podcast. Like, another Toka creator just, they decided to go with the Toka podcast, and they're the only one I've been seeing do it.
Well, they need to invite you on. Y'all need to do a crossover.
Maybe. But I can't even find them now.
Yeah, we haven't had very many guests on the show, of course. For a long time, Dylan was a special guest, and, y'all's mom, my wife Casey, has been a special guest. For a short period of time, she was an official 4th member. Right around the time y'all's youngest brother Johnny was born, she came on, and that's when we adapted the 4-person with the baby logo that was our logo until the beginning of this year. Designed by you, of course. Designed by you from my thoughts. It's like I had the idea for it, and then you go make it happen. Sort of like the logo we're using now.
Yes.
But as we said, my mom was on at least one episode. I think she was on a second episode. I want to say maybe the 100th episode we had her on. she was actually living with us by the time we did the 100th episode, and I don't remember her sitting in person with one, so I may be misremembering that.
I don't know.
But I do feel like she popped in for a second episode.
So I do believe she was on 2.
We had intended to have a friend of yours be a guest on the podcast with us, but
yeah, that
she didn't seem to like that idea for whatever reason. You know, it's Father's Day as this podcast is going up, and I can't help but think I would have loved to have had my dad on a podcast. He and I could have had such a good time. I wish podcasts, I mean, they were just starting to come into their own at the time he passed away.
Yeah,
and I'd been listening to Smodcast for about a year or so by then. I think Smodcast started in 2007. It could have been 2006, so we're just a year or two in, and I just didn't have any inclination that I could do this, you know.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that, I mean, obviously I could sit down and record something if I could find recording equipment, but what was I going to do with it at the time? I should have been more enterprising. I feel like I sort of missed the boat with YouTube too, because I remember watching y'all's oldest brother Marcus and our friend Chris fail spectacularly at Mario Brothers games, and I'm like, this would be, I'm laughing my head off at it, and I'd love to show that to people. And even before that, I used to play the Final Fantasy games and think I'd love to record this and, you know, read out all the text and do all the voices for it. And that's
I
kind of
hate doing voices.
I know I don't hate doing voices. It's just like when I have to do like 70 voices in a row and I don't have time to rehearse or practice, and it's like, I gotta do another one? Come on!
You want to do the voices, you do the voices.
But I'm just thinking, I sort of missed I had a YouTube channel at that time. It was just for our short films, but I feel like we could have gotten into doing some other stuff if I'd just been a little more enterprising. And I can't.
It was the early days.
I can't help but think about that with the podcast too. Like if my dad and I could have sat down, we could have had a great time on the podcast. We could have done one hell of a podcast. So
yeah.
It never was an option for LexiCon because of the time that it was born. But he somehow would have loved to have done a podcast with. And then my friend Jeff, who was my tattoo artist, who actually reminded me a lot of my dad. I tried. Now you want to talk, Mikey?
Yeah.
She tried to get you to say hi earlier. Now I'm sitting here, you know, waxing nostalgic, and you're going to sit here and meow over it. But
meowed over you saying that.
But I talked with him on multiple occasions, tried to get him to come be on the show. He wouldn't have come over to our studio to do it, but we could have gone to the tattoo shop and done it. It could have just been him and I, even if he would have been more comfortable without you being a part of it. Not to insult you or anything, but just because he and I had more of a relationship than he had with you, even though he did give you your one and only tattoo.
That is fact.
I mean, he didn't give it to you. I paid for it, but he did it. But,
he was the artist.
Yes, you have one tattoo. It matches the tattoo of mine. We got matching infinity symbols just after you turned 18. Dylan, you're turning 18. Based on a book that I enjoyed.
No.
Yeah, I know. It's not going to work because the person I'm talking about unfortunately deceased now, and we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm not necessarily comfortable going out and getting tattooed, but I did try on multiple occasions to get Jeff to be on the show, and it seemed like he was considering it. I think it probably would have happened, but unfortunately the pandemic came around in 2020, made it, you know, not feasible at the time, and he passed away early 2021, so it was never to be. But he would have been, you know, as far as realistic guests, he would have been my favorite. Obviously, I'd love to get Tom Hanks on, or maybe, hey, Daddy, Pedro Pascal.
Mikey apparently loves
anyone like that. But as far as, you know, somebody we actually know who could come on as a guest, that all my ideal guests are dead.
You know, maybe
I'm gonna write another book like All My Friends Are Dead. All my guests are dead.
I've got a friend who's made appearances on podcasts. Maybe we could drag him over for one. You know, set up doing one with him.
But like I said, other than that, you guys are the ones I wanted to talk to. So, and like I say, it looks like we did it for a couple years without Gaba being a regular.
Definitely.
I do remember at one point you were sick.
Yes.
And Dylan and I had to fill in.
I believe y'all did an episode on your own, didn't you?
Yeah, we've actually done a couple of episodes without you.
Yes.
And the one in particular I'm talking about, it was Hitchhiker's Guide to RPGs, because we talked about our favorite role-playing games.
I love RPGs.
And we talked about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I'm assuming. And I'm not sure if that's if Gaba was already a regular at that point, or if that's the point at which he became a regular, or if it was just kind of another one-off, because looking back at it, actually looks like even when we were doing the Star Wars commentaries, he was just on for those episodes, so he was still just not a bit player, but he was somebody who would come on for specific episodes and then not be there for others. But, you know, easily for the last 5+ years, he's been a regular cast member. So yeah, I guess I'm the only one who's been on every single episode of LexiCon. All 300 and, what do we say, 56?
Yes.
Yeah, because we're just the reverse of a year. We're not 365 yet, we're 356. That was always a goal of mine. I want to get at least one full year's worth of podcast episodes where you could listen to one every day. And if we're going to include a leap year, I guess we got to go to 366. And actually, technically, we might have to go to 367 because back in the summer of 2020, in the summer of racial reckoning, we actually took a week off in support of the movement. Mm-hmm. And it would have been one thing to just not do an episode that week at all, because then who would have noticed, you know? 'Cause, okay, just a podcast nobody really listens to.
Yeah.
So it's officially an episode, but there is no audio for that episode. There's a post on our website with our thoughts and our feelings on the situation and the reason for that episode. So it is an official episode, but there's actually no audio for that episode.
Yes.
So if you actually want to be able to listen to one episode every day for a full year, including a leap year, we'll have to get to at least 367 episodes. But I know Gaba was at least a regular by 2018 when your mother joined as a regular for a few months. I know Gaba had already been a regular by then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I've been on every single episode, all 356, like technically 355 as far as audio that was recorded, and technically a couple more because there's at least a couple episodes we recorded that never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
And even a couple more because there's some we recorded and then re-recorded. You've been on most every episode. Of course, you were a regular cast member from the beginning. The show is actually named after you, but there are a couple weeks where you weren't there. I think in both cases due to illness. You just were under the weather and didn't feel like performing. We really wanted to get an episode up. So Dylan stepped in for you. And of course, you've both been on every episode for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah.
If not more. Go ahead, you have something you want to say?
No, not yet. I'm working on something.
Yeah, I was jumping around through the archives here looking for notes I wanted to bring up. I saw one episode that always stands out to me. It's The Clerks, which was our first attempt to perform a screenplay with voices from the Mushroom Kingdom, a.k.a. the Super Mario Brothers characters.
Yes.
And, of course, Clerks is a movie by Kevin Smith. It has a relatively small main cast. There's a lot of bit parts. Actually, I don't even think did we do that first, or did we actually do It's the Clerks too? I'm assuming we did It's the Clerks first, but for some reason it feels like we did It's the Clerks too because that's my preferred Clerks movie. Mm-hmm. But regardless, whichever one was first, the other one followed up shortly thereafter, and we've actually done several installments of what I've come to call our Mario audio universe.
Yes.
We've done both Clerks movies. We've done the Clerks follow-up, Mallrats, which was my favorite movie of all time, which we retitled Mario Rats. We did Mario Hamilton, where we performed the entirety of the play Hamilton. We did all the songs. We had no musical backing, of course.
Yes.
Copyright issues. And unfortunately, none of us are singers. I'm a pretty talented rapper, but doing it in a Waluigi voice does leave a little something to be desired. But I had a lot of fun with that episode. That was an episode that we talked about and planned for a long time before we finally got around to doing it. And we did it early 2020. And of course, most recently we've done Mario Wars, when we performed the entirety of the episode 4 A New Hope script as characters from the Mario verse. We did that for the 45th anniversary of A New Hope last May. Mm-hmm. And then we just posted Mario Wars Return of the Plumber, in which we did the script for Return of the Jedi for its 40th anniversary this past May.
Yes.
We're doing them kind of out of order. If we're going to keep hitting anniversaries, I figure next year would be, not The Force Awakens, why do I always want to say that? The Phantom Menace.
Alright.
Which, the Phantom Mushroom, I guess?
Yep.
Because that would be the, if I'm not mistaken, that would be the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. I think it came out in 99.
Very nice.
Which is going to cause all kinds of problems, because then we're going back and then we have to refit Mario characters into because Mario played Han Solo in our audio plays. Han Solo's nowhere to be found. Luigi played Luke. Of course, he's not there until...
Yeah, they're going to have to play the previous generation of characters.
So it's going to be interesting, but I'm looking forward to it. And I already have the script for it.
Nice.
Like when we did It's the Clerks, Hamilton, and Mallrats, we had copies of the scripts for them all, but we just read them right off the page.
Yes.
For whatever reason, when it came to Star Wars, we tried to do it straight off the script.
And it wasn't working.
And we were having too much trouble. We were saying that the actual written names of the characters, and there were other places where we had to make slight modifications. So I said, well, screw it. I'm just going to get a copy of the script, and I'm going to just retype the whole thing, and I'll change all the characters' names, and I'll change the dialogue and the stage directions where applicable.
Yes.
And I did the same thing for Jedi. I already have a copy of the Phantom Menace script. I've had that since the movie came out. That summer.
You can get quite a head start on it.
Or that spring, I was super excited about the Phantom Menace, the first new Star Wars movie in decades, and so I got the script book, and I got the coloring books, and I got the figures, and I got all the stuff.
You did not do that for when Disney decided to make new ones.
I was, yeah.
You were excited.
Because early on it was like, we're ignoring the extended canon. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, it wasn't the same. It was a big deal when Phantom Menace came out. Say what you want about the movie, and I still think it's a good movie. I think it holds up. Maybe it's not as good as the original trilogy, but it's certainly better than what Disney gave us.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a big deal because, like, Star Wars had sort of left the pop culture consciousness. It's not like we didn't like it still, and I love Star Wars. It was a big deal to me growing up, but there'd been so little new Star Wars other than the books. And at the time, I just wasn't much of a novel reader.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I read a lot, but I mainly read shorter stuff like magazines and newsletters and stuff. And when I dip into books, it would usually be nonfiction books. So Star Wars had really sort of gotten out of my bloodstream by and large until there was an announcement, oh, there's new Star Wars coming out. And I guess even slightly before that, when they did the special editions of the original trilogy. But all the new Star Wars, that really got us excited for Star Wars again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those prequels coming out, say what you want about them, they sort of reinvigorated Star Wars, and they were a big deal. And, of course, like I said, we pay tribute to them by doing commentaries on the channel. I think commentaries are somewhat of our signature. You have the commentaries, and you have the Mario-verse episodes. We haven't attempted to do, like, an audio play as anything other than the Mario characters yet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that would be or what we could do, but I enjoy our Mario audio universe. I think aside from those two things, though, our other signature episodes would have to be the Harry Potter breakdown episodes.
Yes.
Not the commentaries for the movies, and not even like the review of Cursed Child, but we've actually gone back and broken down bits of the books. And this all kind of started when I was thinking about the Through the Trapdoor chapter of the Sorcerer's Stone and how preposterous some of that stuff is, even within the context of a magical world.
Yes.
And so we did an episode strictly on that chapter. And then from there, because I reread the Harry Potter.
Started with one chapter.
I reread the Harry Potter books probably once a year at least. I'm still an unabashed fan of the books at least. I understand a lot of people have problems with the books now, and specifically with the author of the books, and I totally respect that. For me, it's a case of trust the art, not the artist. Mm-hmm. And of course, I got into the books before I even knew anything about the author, and certainly before any of us knew the current beliefs of hers that give so many people so much trouble.
Yes.
But anyway, as I was going through those, rereading the books, I'd start to notice little things here or there that would, give me pause. And after doing that Through the Trapdoor episode, I started to actually take some notes when I would read the books. And I think we actually started with book 3, and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, then went back and did 1 and 2. But yeah, it's usually, as I say, it's usually either stuff that doesn't make sense because, of course, the books weren't all written at one time, so as you go along and build the canon, it's like something you said in one book might not match up later, even though I think, by and large, the text does a good job of staying consistent, but there's still some inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they're just actual typos that I'd like to point out, or just grammatical mistakes that came up.
Yeah, we've also...
For some reason. And well, hold on. And then there's other instances where it seems like a character... excuse me. It seems like a character is performing against their sort of against their character, for lack of a better word. It's like, would that character really do that? Or even you question the motivation of a character and seeing like, why are they doing that now? Or if it had played out the way they wanted it to, what were they hoping to accomplish? So it's something like that. And we've done those. Wow, we've done 2 for every book. Uh-huh. And actually some of those were split into 2 episodes themselves. Yes. And we've done the Sorcerer's Stone 3 times if you count the original Through the Trapdoor chapter.
Yes.
And we did one for the last Fantastic Beasts movie.
Yep.
So we've probably got a good 24 episodes in those.
Definitely.
And I really like those because it's something where we're very focused on the topic, and it's something where I've taken time to really do a lot of research insofar as I made all the notes of why I was questioning these things, and then I just used my pre-existing knowledge of the books to back up my conclusions.
Yeah. But
I like that when we have a topic we can really dive into where there's a structure to it, but we can also go off in our own theories and our own pathways. So if you just hate Harry Potter, especially because of your feelings toward the author or whatnot, I get that. But even if you're not a specific fan, but you're like, I'm fine with it, I can take it or leave it. And if you are a Harry Potter fan, I think those episodes are really good. I think those are pretty much the cream of the crop of what we've done. And I'd like to find some other episodes similar to that. I've thought about doing the Lord of the Rings books, but I'm not sure if they're quite fertile enough for that. But we might delve into that. But I think those episodes are really amongst the cream of the crop of what we've done. And they're some of the ones I enjoy doing the most.
Yeah, I was going to say, during those episodes, we also, because we own 2 or 3 copies of, like, each book, we would notice little changes between the books because of
there
publishing.
There were inconsistency between the editions, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even like the British version versus the American version.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because early on you could see in the books there were certain things they would change for the American audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's
the title of the first book.
That, and also it's a crude example, but like in America we say boogers. Mm-hmm. And in Britain apparently they say bogies.
Yeah.
And early on they would change that to booger. And then later on it would be bogies. So you'd see more Britishisms creeping up in the books, even in the American editions of the books later on. But all of our editions are American editions. They were just published in different times. You know, we have an earlier edition and a later edition. And yeah, there'll be wholesale changes. Like the one that stands out to me the most is the confrontation between Albus Dumbledore and Draco Malfoy on the top of the lightning-struck tower at the climax of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Mm-hmm. Where in the copy that I had, that I was reading and that I was making my notes from, and that I had read multiple times, there's no mention of this, but in your copy of the book, which is the one we used when we sat down and needed a reference doing the show, in your copy, Dumbledore actually goes on explicitly saying, we could fake your death, Draco. You know, Voldemort's not going to be able to find you if he thinks you're dead, something to that effect. And that's nowhere near in the book. Dumbledore talks about being able to protect him and to keep him safe if he doesn't carry out Voldemort's plan and he turns against Voldemort. Yeah. But the explicit conversation of, well, let's just fake your death wasn't there in the book. And that was like, wow. Yeah. There was another instance in that same book, too, where I think something was missing from your copy of the book. Possibly. Where I'm reading through it to make a reference. I'm like, wait a minute, there should be some more here. And I know this chapter. I know this text really well. This is one of my favorite Harry Potter books, and I've read it a lot, and I've just read it recently. And there's a piece that's not there, and I end up going back and getting my copy and saying, look, right here, it's there. So that's really interesting that just different editions of the same book for the same market would have such market differences. Yeah.
But those are fun episodes.
Those are, like I said, and I understand if you just can't stomach Harry Potter at this point. You know, I sympathize. I still enjoy.
We have other offerings.
I still enjoy, you know, that content for what it is. Yes. But I can understand that's not your cup of tea. But if you are a Harry Potter fan, or you just don't have strong feelings one way or the other, I think those are some really good episodes. And like Lexi says, it's not this isn't Pottercast. Fact. Although to be fair, probably a good quarter of our episodes.
It's my podcast, damn it, not Harry Potter's.
We do talk a lot of Harry Potter because I am a very, very big fan of the series of books, and I like making fun of the movies. So
we still need to talk Percy Jackson.
But that may be a future episode. Maybe. Guys, I'm going to be honest, I'm starting to kind of lose my voice a little bit, so we might want to wrap this episode up.
I was going to say, you're talking about a bunch of episodes and whatnot. You had a list, didn't you?
I do. I have a high 5 episodes of the 10 years of LexiCon podcast.
I don't know the exact orderings, but I managed to throw together a couple of the high 5s that we mentioned earlier in the episode.
All right. So did you want to do what you were doing, or? Well, yeah, and leading up to this episode, I wanted to do a high 5 both to pay tribute to the High Five's existence on the podcast and just the podcast in general by going over some of our favorite episodes. And we've mentioned a lot of them at this point. But this is my High 5 LexiCon episodes. And, of course, High 5?
High 5!
Always includes an honorable mention. I struggle a little bit with the order here. And, again, to be fair, as we said earlier, there's only one episode of the podcast I've ever gone back and listened to. So this is just all my memory of what I thought were good episodes at the time, at least. Yes. So, for honorable mention, I went with our Clerks 3 review, which is the most recent podcast that's going to make this list. This was just last fall, I believe. I was not a fan of Clerks 3. I thought it was a good movie in a vacuum, but I thought it completely destroyed the movie that came before it, which we've already talked about. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think you guys were even a little surprised at my animus toward the movie, because I hadn't shared too much of my thoughts after we had seen it, because I wanted to save it for the podcast.
I know you either really liked it or really hated it.
Yeah, and I love the thumbnail art you made for it, which is a play on the classic Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, one of the greatest comic strips of all time, by the way, along with Bloom County. But the Calvin peeing on something, I had you do Kevin Smith peeing on the grave of Clerks 2.
Yes.
I liked Clerks 3 for the most part.
But again, y'all can go back and check it out. This is one of our episodes from just last fall. From there, I'm going to go back even further. Number 5 is going to be The Gay Avengers.
Yes.
To be fair, I really don't remember what we talked about. I'm sure we made some allusions to the
But that has
being
just been one of the
homosexuals.
iconic
But
episodes.
we've referenced back then. I remember after recording a thing, and this was the high watermark for the episode.
Yeah.
I think the description of is something like a father and daughter imagine a world where the rainbow bridge is even more symbolic, or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's a fairly early episode. I want to say it's like in the 30s for us, which even that would be further along than you'd think it would be.
Yes.
I thought about going back and getting episode numbers and dates for all these, but I was a little lazy. I apologize. I see we're in the 50s back here in January 2016, so we're probably looking 2015.
Ish. Yes.
Yeah, wow. Because I go back to there, we're 20. So
we did a lot in 2015.
Yeah, 2015 is probably the year where we really started getting dedicated to doing the podcast week in and week out. There's a LexiCon episode number. Magic Able to Meet You. Yeah, I tried to make a note in my phone. I don't remember if I was typing or if I was trying to do speech to text, but about a magic 8-ball.
Yes.
And it was like the magic 8-ball told me, because it was song lyrics that I got in my head when we were in Walmart one night. And I wanted to jot them down. And my phone changed it to instead of the magic 8-ball told me, it became Magic Able to Meet You.
Yes.
And that's the title of episode number 35, which was followed up by episode number 36, which was on my 36th birthday. So that was a nice little bit of serendipity. I know I'm getting off topic here from the high five. I promise I haven't abandoned it. But, hey, this is definitely in keeping with the spirit of the podcast.
Definitely.
So that's July 2015.
Yes.
So let's see. I'm thinking it's episode 37. Nah, that's Strange Places. Okay, well, I'm not going to keep digging for it. But it's definitely in the first couple of years of the podcast.
Alright.
And number 4 is going to be, I think, even earlier than that, is Brony Justice. in which, for some reason, we end up tracking down brony haters with Kanye West, of all people. And I think that might have been an allusion to the fact that I see the Gay Avengers thumbnail there, but I think that might have been an allusion to the fact that I've always thought Kanye West was in the closet. And certainly knowing Kanye as he is now, I wouldn't go hunting brony haters with him. I certainly wouldn't go hunting bronies with him. But that particular part was we had spoken about a particularly hideous hate crime here, where somebody had I say here because it's in our home state, had bashed out the windows of somebody's car just because they had the nerve to have brony positive stuff on it. Yeah,
they just had My Little Pony decals on it.
I'm sure that the whole of the episode was not about that, but that was the part that stood out enough to us to title the episode of it, to title the episode after it, and it. I always thought of that as one of our high water episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, LexiCon Gay Avengers is actually episode 25.
Yeah,
and
so pretty early on.
I didn't have a description of it here because this is our this is actually our Instagram page, which was making for easier reference.
Yes.
Why don't y'all look up really quickly what y'all can look this up on YouTube, or you can look it up on LexiCon podcast.wordpress.com. No, it wouldn't be that. It would be anchor.fm/LexiCon podcast, which is our current podcast home. What number episode the Clerks review was? If we're going to do this, we might as well do it right.
Okay.
What was it called?
Which thing?
The episode. What was it called?
Gosh, I don't know what it was called, Dill. Just go to our YouTube page. It'll be on there.
Okay.
You can find the thumbnail.
Just give me a little bit.
Yeah, sure. You do that. Lex and I'll vamp. Vamp, Lexi, vamp.
Oh, no. I was trying to double-check some information that I put on.
341.
Episode 341. Does it have a date?
October 23rd, 2022.
So there you go. October 23rd, 2022, episode number 341. What's the name of it?
Dante's Inferno.
Dante's Inferno, our Clerks 3 review. That is my honorable mention for the High Five LexiCon episodes. And again, I'm not shitting all over it. I was a huge Kevin Smith fan, and I'll admit it's a decent movie. Maybe even a very good movie. But just as much as I love Clerks 2 and as much as I feel like it steps all over the soul of Clerks 2, I just couldn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And moving on from there, number 5 on the list, of course, is episode number 25, The Gay Avengers, which went up March 20th, 2015. The description of it is, a father and daughter expose their lack of in-depth knowledge of comic books and envision a world in which the Rainbow Bridge is an appropriate bit of symbolism. So, obviously, we're talking comics and apparently homosexuality, and for whatever reason, I've always felt like that was a high watermark for the series.
Absolutely.
But again, disclaimer, I haven't gone back and listened to it. So maybe it doesn't hold up, but in my mind it does.
Nice.
Again, number 4 on the list is going to be Brony Justice, and I know I can find the thumbnail here on Instagram. I had made the Instagram page years later, though, so it's not going to have the dates. But it's going to be episode 16, so that's a really early episode. That's probably our first episode, our first really good episode.
Possibly.
So let's see. It wouldn't be August. So maybe September 2014.
Either that or October.
Oh, it's going to be October. I missed it by 1. So,
that's how we kicked off October 2014.
So number 4 on my high five of LexiCon episodes was the only episode in October 2014. It was on October 9th, 2014. Episode number 16, Brony Justice. A father and daughter start off with bad accents, join Kanye West to hunt down My Little Pony haters, and finally get around to their high five.
Amazing.
And I noticed in the tags we have Brony's Ed Sheeran funny multiplayer. That might have been left over from a previous episode.
I have questions, but the episode was so good we didn't need any others that month.
There you go. Either that or we just got lazy.
Yeah.
Alright, so next up on my high five of LexiCon episodes, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because I always cheat on these kind of lists.
Yes.
It's gonna be our reviews for both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
Nice.
Now I do believe, yes, The Force Awakens episode was our 50th show. We referenced that earlier. It's LexiCon episode L, episode 50. The Spoilers Awaken. Anybody got a date on that?
No.
We literally looked it up earlier.
We did.
I apologize for not being more prepared. I probably shouldn't even be going through... Well, let's see. It was released in, what? December 2016, right? So it's got to be December 2016. No, 2015. My bad.
I was going to say, I don't remember.
So I'm sure it was in December 2015. Right before the Mallrats commentary. Yes, so episode 50 went up on December 24th, Christmas Eve, 2015. So,
wow.
so much for a Christmas episode that year. That's one of our longest episodes ever. It's a good 3 hours. We actually started recording on our way to the theater that night and recorded in the car on the way back and then sat down and then probably did another hour or so on it. It says spoilers officially begin at 32:39 and end at an hour and 47 minutes and 37 seconds. So probably close to 2 hours of podcast there. What's on your mind?
I was going to say, you mentioned recording stuff in the car, and am I crazy? We mentioned...
Yes.
I mean, yeah, but we mentioned our trip to Wisconsin back in 2016 or whenever, earlier in the episode. Did we try to?
No, we did one. Oh, we did.
I was thinking we had a moving truck with us on the way back.
You and Dylan and I were in the moving truck.
Yeah.
And your mother and grandmother were in the car. And yeah, we recorded in the moving truck. That's right. Because we also recorded an episode on the road when we went to Wisconsin a few years later after grandmother passed away.
Yes.
I remembered that one, but yeah, I had forgotten that. We did do one in the moving truck. I don't think the audio was great on that, but I'm pretty sure we did.
I don't know if it saw the light of day or not, but didn't we?
It did. It would have been around, well, that's September 2016, so...
Probably around that time.
Getting off track of our high five again for a minute, but yeah.
We'll eventually get around to it.
Yeah, like I said, we had that one, and we did. That might have been the On the Road episode, because I know there was an episode titled On the Road.
Nice.
Although it might not have gone up in... Or is that Flamenco's?
Probably, because that's when I was drinking a Mountain Dew. And
episode, this is not part of the high five. This is some of like the other honorable mentions. Or here's some other episodes. LexiCon number 90, Flamenco's. Stuck in traffic on the last leg of their recent road trip, a father and daughter amuse themselves by carrying on a conversation, including some interesting talk about flamencos. Note, the audio quality is not great. This was recorded in the cab of a sometimes in motion moving truck.
Yes.
That wasn't our first on the road episode, though. When we went back to our actual hometown in the fall of 2014, we recorded an episode in the hotel room. Disagree.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure it's the one we did in the hotel room.
Yeah. Well, it's the only one that month again. November,
that's probably it. Yeah, father and daughter hit the road, deliver a jumbo-sized episode, and coin a new word. Disagree. One of the words that is spawned out of the podcast, along with movie-fi, which is how I define when you have some other source material. Usually a book, usually a Harry Potter book, and the scene in the movie has to be bigger and louder and flashier, unnecessarily so, in my opinion.
In my opinion, the perfect example of movie-fi is the Percy Jackson movie, where they just completely fucked it all up because they movie-fied it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. But let's get back to our high five now, because Number 3 is a joint episode along with the December 2015 episode number 50, The Spoilers Awaken, in which we reviewed The Force Awakens. I also want to include the December 20th, 2017 episode, CLI. What the hell is that in Roman numerals? Is that 61?
Probably.
No, because C is 100. Well, let's look at the episode after. It's 151 for crying out loud. Yeah, C is 100, L is 50, 1 is 1, or I is 1. So, LexiCon episode 151, The Spoiled Jedi. A father, daughter, and son discuss why Rian Johnson hates J.J. Abrams. This is our both spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review of The Last Jedi, in which I say, look, The Last Jedi is a fine movie. It's a terrible Star Wars movie, though.
Yeah.
As much as I hated The Force Awakens, at least it's a Star Wars movie. And again, I don't know what Rian Johnson had against J.J. Abrams, but he basically threw out everything that J.J. did in The Force Awakens, which I don't necessarily mind, but what he replaced it with wasn't that good. This is also the episode in which I started my custom of rating movies sort of like YouTuber Pro Jared would rate games, where instead of being like a number out of 10, it would be an item or a concept out of 10.
Yes.
In this case, I think I gave The Last Jedi a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild bomb arrow out of 10 because it was big and flashy, but at the end of the day, it was ultimately pointless. So if I had to pick one, I would say check out the Last Jedi review, episode 151.
Reasonable.
But I think they're both well worth listening to. I mean, if you like those movies, I wasn't unnecessarily cruel to them. I just gave my opinion. Yeah. I was disappointed in both of them, and I stated the case. And if you like to hear Dylan and I argue, those are definitely ones worth checking out.
Definitely.
Also, our Steven Universe future episode.
Oh, gosh.
That was one I think you weren't around for.
Probably not.
I think you were ill that night. It's like, let's talk about it, Dill.
Yeah.
Like we say in the opening, let's talk about that. Now, the next two are also... The final two on my High Five LexiCon episodes are also going to be cheats. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Number 2, and I only didn't put this in number 1 because of the fact that it is such a polarizing topic at this point. Mm-hmm. But the Potter series, all our breakdowns of the Potter books,
all of them.
I just think those are there's no one that stands out to me amongst them all. I think I really enjoyed doing them all, and I think they're all really good listens if you're okay with the topic.
Yes.
And if you're not, I totally get that, but I really like the Potter series. And like I say, if it weren't for the fact that it was such a polarizing topic at this point, I would easily put that at number 1. But that being the case, my number 1 on my High Five LexiCon episodes is the Mario audio universe. Look, they're silly, they're a little ramshackle, The Hamilton episode has no music, of course, and we're not great singers, but we had such a good time doing it. And we really put our heart and soul into those episodes. And I really think there's some good entertainment to be had there with It's a Clerks 2, Mario Rats, Mario Hamilton, Mario Wars, and Mario Wars Return of the Plumber. So I think more than anything, those are the episodes that really highlight what our show is all about.
Very nice.
So what did you have for us?
Okay, so I'll just go in the order of which I wrote them down. I tried thinking and redoing that top 5 movies. I failed.
Thinking is good, but it can be dangerous.
I failed. I wrote down 2 movies and realized that I have no idea how to figure out what other movies I enjoy. But the 2 movies I managed to put on the list were probably Fashion Fairy Tale and the 1949 version of Little Women.
Okay.
Yeah. But then my top 5 Barbie movies.
High five.
Yes, I'm sorry, I wrote top.
Damn it, it's the gimmick. Rep the gimmick.
In no particular order, I put Fashion Fairy Tale, Mermaid Tale, Barbie Diaries, Diamond Castle, 12 Dancing Princesses, and as an honorable mention, Big City, Big Dreams, which is one of the newer ones that introduced the other Barbie.
Uh-huh.
That may not have been a nice way to describe it. I'm sorry, if you've seen the movie, you get it. But then, of course, the High Five Hollywood Daddies.
Wait. Hey, Daddy.
Oh, God. So again, in no specific order, I put Pedro Pascal, Tom Hiddleston, Sebastian Stan, Henry Cavill, Idris Elba, and Tom Hanks as the honorable mention.
Gabba, do you co-sign that list? I take that as a yes.
Alright, what about you, Maddie?
I suppose.
Okay.
I don't have any immediate revulsions to any of them.
Okay.
I'm a great fan of some of them as actors, especially Idris Elba and Tom Hanks, so yeah, I'll co-sign it.
Alright.
So again, my voice is really straining here. We should probably wrap this up.
Yes.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
My goal is to at least get to 360.
5.
Yeah, well, 367, so we can actually have an audio episode for every day of a year, including a leap year. So
And a bonus one.
Well, no, because like I said, there's one episode where there's no audio for it.
True,
We were taking a stand, and so there's actually no audio. So if you actually want to be able to listen to an episode every day of a calendar year, and if that year happens to be a leap year, we have to get to at least 367 episodes.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily plan to quit at that point, I'm saying, but we're going to at least get to that. So maybe not another 10 years, but at least another few episodes, and probably years to come, because, I mean...
And if we go back to that original uploading schedule routine...
I still enjoy doing this. I hope you all do, too.
I do.
This podcast is only slightly younger than Skyrim.
Nice.
Well, on that note... So for our original celebrity supporter, Tom Hanks, and for our newest celebrity daddy, Pedro Pascal, hey daddy, and to everyone else listening, thank you for listening, and please come back next time when the conversation will continue. But until then, I am and will continue to be Maddie,
Lexi,
Dylan,
and this is LexiCon concluded.
Bye!
Hey daddy.